Welcome to Moments with Marianne. This is your host, Marianne Pastana. And we're here today with special guests, Lisa Marchiano, Deborah Stewart, and Joseph Lee. And they're here to share with us their new book, Dreamwise, Unlocking the Meaning of Your Dreams. So can your dreams help you shape a better tomorrow? Well, today's guests are going to share just that. Lisa Marchiano is a certified Jungian analyst, licensed clinical social worker, and co-host of the podcast This Jungian Life. She holds a BA from Brown University, a master's in international affairs from Columbia University, and a social work degree from New York University. Deborah Stewart is a certified Jungian analyst, therapist, and licensed clinical social worker. She is an active member of the Philadelphia Association of Jungian Analysts and the Interregional Society of Jungian Analysts. And Joseph Lee is a certified Jungian analyst, podcaster, and teacher. He's the co-creator and co-host of This Jungian Life podcast and Dream School. He lectures nationally on the consciousness-raising technology of the Western mystery tradition and Hermetic Kabbalah. So welcome to the show, Lisa Marchiano, Deborah Stewart, and Joseph Lee.
Thank you.
Nice to be here.
Thanks.
Well, what an honor it is to have the three of you here to talk about this book. Why don't we start with you, Lisa? What was the inspiration behind writing this book?
Well, the three of us have been podcasting together since 2018, and we always interpret a listener's dream. So we'd gotten into a rhythm where we were getting really good at working together on people's dreams, and our listeners wanted to know how they could work with dreams the way they heard us working with dreams. So we founded Dream School, and Dream School is an online program that teaches people how to work with their dreams. And it was such a success that we thought, gee, I think we could turn this into a book. And it's been quite an adventure to do so.
Well, the book pretty much follows, in a way, the general outline, as we discovered, from Dream School, with many, many more examples, because it's a book instead of a course. Of dreams and categories that are very faithful to Jung's categories, methodology, and theory, made very explicit with explanations and examples, chances for the reader to practice what is in that chapter, and little keys that kind of highlight the essential points in each chapter. So it's really very operational, and that was our intention, is to make people able to actually implement the concept in each chapter.
Well, I think if I ask myself the question of what prompted us to write the book and put it out, for me it's about the healing power of dreams. That dream work in and of itself, it increases self-awareness and self-understanding. It can provide emotional healing, that it can resolve internal conflicts. It can enhance creativity. It can give us guidance at tremendous pivot points in our lives, that it can teach us to cultivate self-compassion. And it can be an organic way of developing a kind of spirituality that is an active creative genius from within yourself. And so the book is a gate into these incredible benefits that dream work offers. And not everyone has access to a Jungian analyst. So this is work that people can do in great measure by themselves or with a group of people who all want to buy the book and roll up their sleeves.
It sounds like that would be a fun book club to be a part of.
It would. It would very much.
So Lisa, I mean, you the three of you start off, chapter 1, why work with dreams? And I know Joseph has gone into this a little bit. Are there other reasons we'd work with our dreams, and why is it important?
Well, I think that Joseph has done a really good job of getting started on that. The thing is that Jung believed that we have a conscious personality, and then there's the rest of us, the unconscious, which is infinitely vast, really. And we know what consciousness thinks. We have our ego perspective, our waking personality, and how we move through the world. But there's this whole other part of us that has maybe a different perspective. It might give a fuller experience. It might think something completely different from what we think consciously. And that's going to come through in dreams. So it's sort of like you actually have an inner companion who's accompanying you throughout your life, who notices things you might not notice, who sees things very differently, and who wants to share their perspective with you. And we refer to this part of us in the book as the dream maker. The dream maker has wisdom to share. And the only way it can really communicate to you is through your dreams. So wouldn't you like to know what it has to say?
I think many people would. And for those folks that go, oh gosh, I don't dream or I never remember my dreams. I mean, what would you say to them, Deborah?
Well, there are in the book, there is a whole appendix which gives people a lot of very specific ideas and ways to boost dream recall. And that is not at all an uncommon comment that people make. Oh gosh, I never dream. Or I wake up and then the dream is gone. So there are lots of ways to increase your dream recall. And everybody dreams. We can have access to our dreams, and they provide a wealth of information that we can use in our waking life. So this is simply a process of developing dream recall rather than, oh golly, I don't dream. Yes, you do.
Well, thank you for taking the time to share that with us. And I understand in your book, you describe 3 levels of dream imagery. Can you share that with us and how that works for us?
Sure. Well, we talk about personal associations. So those would be memories, thoughts, feelings that you have about a particular dream image. Let's say that you dream, about a car. And so was it the first car that you drove in college? You have personal associations to most items in the dream. And these are so important. Jung was really clear that we can't interpret a dream without knowing that. What did that car mean to you? What experiences did you have in that car? Where was it in your life? And the next level is explanation. And Jung didn't talk specifically about this, but he certainly implied it. And it's something that Jungian analysts do use a lot. Is we look at an explanation for something, and this might come in handy if you don't have a personal association or that it's a general item. So let's say that you dream about a car, but it's not your first car from college. It's just a car. So we might say, well, what is a car? A car is a way that you move through the world, as an individual. It's not a bus. It's not a ferry. It's a personalized mode of mechanized transportation. And lots of people do dream about cars. I know I dream about cars a lot. And it's an image for sort of how you move through the world. So finally, there's archetypal amplification. And this is very particular to Jung. So Jung noted that we all have access to a substrate of universal images. For example, the image of the Great Mother, whether that's the Venus of Willendorf or the Virgin Mary. Cultures, time and again, produce images of the Mother that are considered sacred, and so it's considered to be an archetypal image. And such images appear all the time in dreams. Lots of people dream about snakes, for example, or you might dream of a wedding, or you might have a dream of a tree, or you might have a dream of fire. And these are images that can be found again and again in myths and fairy tales and religious imagery. And we can understand them better in our dreams by looking at what they mean in these archetypal contexts.
So, Joseph, are dreams considered symbolic?
Yes, For the most part, they are. Sometimes the unconscious mind is paying a lot of attention to what's going on around us and picking up, frankly, millions of bits of information that our conscious awareness couldn't attend to. So, once in a while, your dream maker is telling you what's around the bend, and it is giving you some pretty practical advice. But for the most part, dreams are designed to help you stay psychologically grounded. And by that I mean, in our waking attitude, it's very easy to get swept into extremes, that we find ourselves totally obsessed with a certain topic, or that we can't tolerate a certain thing. The dream maker inside of us is invested in us staying well balanced. And so the dreams are often compensating for the way in which we are being too much. And it does that by giving us representative images, metaphors, and storylines. So, for instance, you might have a dream about a dog. Now, a dog often has something to do with friendliness, companionability, loyalty, and depending on how the dog is behaving in the dream, it gives the dreamer an opportunity to look at those qualities. If the dog is undernourished, then that symbol could suggest that your capacity to be loyal and companionable needs a lot more support. It may be that you've been feeling rather lonely and disenfranchised. And so the symbol of the dog may come to you to tell you that there is an inner other. There is a certain spiritual presence inside of you that has not abandoned you, even if the outer world is somehow feeling against you.
Mm.
So the symbol inside the dream, when it's looked at in this broader way, can help us apply these comforts and guidance to a lot of things that are, frankly, very practical.
So, Deborah, how do we, distinguish what is, a dream that is influenced by a personal experience versus maybe a universal theme?
Well, that's such a good question. And it goes right to Jung's theory, his discovery that we have a much deeper level of the unconscious than our personal memories. There are two levels, and he called the deeper level the collective unconscious. So we have that personal layer that we dream about with characters, situations, people in our dreams of your third grade teacher or your next door neighbor, or like Lisa mentioned, the car that you drove in college that can relate to dream symbols. But there are also universal symbols, mythologies, deep structures that we have accrued over thousands and thousands of years, just as our physiology has evolved, but it's based on and still has reference points to our pre-hominid days. We have this vast store in the unconscious that is universal amongst all people, with thousands of years of symbols, images, and kinds of dramatic themes. And that is Jung's one of his unique contributions to psychology, and one that lends an additional level of meaning to dreams.
Why don't we start with you, Lisa? When Jung talks about the shadow, how does that have a relevance to dream work?
Wow, the shadow is such an important concept in dreams, and of course, it's become a pretty popular concept in social media spaces like TikTok. I understand. Jung used the term shadow to refer to all parts of ourselves that are not considered acceptable. So we learn as we're growing up. We learn from our teachers and our parents. that some qualities are really admired and welcomed, and other parts of ourselves are not acceptable. And those unacceptable parts go into the shadow, but they don't go away. In some sense, they just kind of gain more energy down there. And also, they may seek integration later in life. In fact, they usually do. They come knocking on our door and they ask for readmittance, and they want to be developed and they want to be known. And one of the ways that they approach us is through our dreams. So we may see images of ourselves in a dream, for example, acting in a very shadowy way, doing something we would never do in waking life. A lot of times people might have a dream of themselves doing something really inappropriate. And we might think, well, is that a dream that where the dream maker is saying, hey, look, you have a tendency to actually behave in this way that you're not even aware of. Most of the time, though, shadow shows up as a same-sex figure in a dream. So if you're a woman, your shadow may be another woman in a dream. It may be your sister, it may be a coworker, and of course, if you're a man, your shadow is likely to show up as a brother or some other man in your dream. And it will be worthwhile for you to say, how am I like that person? And in what way am I different? And you'll begin to get a sense then of what those shadow qualities are, how you're relating to them, and what they want from you.
So, Joseph, when we have dreams that we can't really discern if there's any personal association whatsoever in the dream, how do we move forward with that?
We can use the images in the dream as purely symbolic derivatives. So in that way, that we would try to translate the events of the dream and the images into metaphors. And then when they've kind of been translated in that way, then we can find that the dream may apply to circumstances that we couldn't imagine in the beginning. Also, as Deb had said, all of the images in a dream have an archetypal underpinning. When you see an image of a tree in a dream, it's also the universal the universal tree. When you see a specific ocean you swam in, it's also the universal ocean. So sometimes we can look at images that we don't know much about personally and try to think about it as universals. If we think about it that way, then, as we do in the book, we can map some of those universals to the deep strata of our psyche. So, to, let's say, find yourself in the middle of the ocean has something to do with being plunged into the unconscious, the irrational, and the unpredictable. To see a boat in the distance with healthy, handsome people that are waving and dancing is an image of the ego, which is the quality of consciousness that rides on the ocean. To find ourselves floundering while we see others on the boat speeding along can give us a very general sense that our own ego strength is not as strong as we need it to be. This is the kind of dream that somebody might have if they have ADHD, where their ability to stay above the water, focused and moving in a clear direction, can be really, really difficult. So even though we don't personally recognize the images in the dream, we can generalize them. There are also instances where dreams are gifted to us as part of the change of culture. Sometimes people are having dreams on behalf of a community. There's a famous example of a guy named Max Zeller who came to Jung and said that he had a dream of himself helping lay the bricks for a new temple. And he came to Jung and he asked about it. And Jung said, yeah. Lots of people are having that dream, that actually humanity in general is building the structure for a new kind of religious attitude that is slowly happening in the collective psyche. So while the dream wasn't personal, it was inferring a very deep process that all human beings are going through.
How would you recommend readers begin working with the keys in Dreamwise?
I think what I am thinking about is, rather than any kind of specific order, the keys are embedded in each chapter, and so they relate to the theme of that chapter. For example, there are keys in the chapter on shadow that obviously relate to the chapter on shadow. There are keys in each chapter that are specific, and that you can take them, a reader can take them one at a time and work through them methodically. And there are also practice exercises. And I would also say not to be too linearly, rationally dogged about how you use the keys. They're there for the reader as a way in, as a way to literally and symbolically unlock a concept and unlock understanding. So there it's not a rigid kind of thing, but what we hope is a way of having something be present in a succinct form that can help the reader pinpoint a concept and how it applies to his or her dream. Lisa, you might want to add something there, because Lisa was our great locksmith.
Well, the keys are really prompts. So the book will discuss a concept a little bit theoretically, not too much theory, and then we give you several examples. You can see how that concept shows up in real people's dreams. We have more than 160 dreams in the book. And then there's the key. And the key provides you with questions that you can use when you're working with one of your own dreams. And we do have a list of all the keys at the back of the book as well. So when you have a dream, you can just go to the back of the book and just pick any of the keys and start anywhere and see which one unlocks meaning for you.
Well, on that note, we're going to pause here for a quick break. We've been speaking with Lisa Marchiano, Deborah Stewart, and Joseph Lee in regards to their new book, Dreamwise, Unlocking the Meaning of Your Dreams. You've been listening to Moments with Mary Ann. We'll be right back after these messages from our sponsors.
Are you an author, speaker, or expert who is looking for more publicity? Visit radioguestlist.com and sign up for free interview requests from shows looking for guests. Radio Guest List is the #1 free booking resource for radio, podcasts, and TV talk shows who are looking for experts like you right now. Visit radioguestlist.com and sign up today to get the visibility you deserve.
There comes a moment when you realize you're somewhere special. When you discover that each beautiful creature that you see has been rescued from a life of absolute horror and brought to this incredibly free place. Here's where their lives were forever changed, and where yours will as well. Discover over 500 tigers, bears, and lions at the brand new visitor center at the Wild Animal Sanctuary just outside Denver. For more information, visit wildanimalsanctuary.org. Discover true freedom at the Wild Animal Sanctuary.
It's one thing to become attached to your perfect home, but what do you do when that home becomes attached to you? A family in dire need of a fresh start, a mysterious house tied to the past. Buried deep within the foundation of the old Far Hill Manor lies a centuries-old secret. Dark forces or something stronger just waiting to be discovered. Caretaker, a supernatural thriller by breakout authors R.J. Halpert.
Internationally recognized and award-winning author Judy Goodman works and teaches outside the box of limited thinking. Working with people from every walk of life, her goal is to empower you to be the best you can be, no matter what the challenge is. Born with the gift of seeing beyond our normal vision, she has an extraordinary gift of working with every challenge. teaching beyond conventional wisdom. Her work is described as life-changing. Visit judygoodman.com. That's judygoodman.com.
I'd like to thank Jason Eastwood at Guitarfulness for sharing his inspiring music and talent with us. His music is known worldwide for cultivating atmospheres of harmony, inner peace, and clarity. Visit Jason's website at guitarfulness.com. Join his newsletter, be part of his community, and download his music. Welcome back to Moments with Mary Ann. We're here today with special guests, Lisa Marchiano, Deborah Stewart, and Joseph Lee, in regards to their new book, Dreamwise, Unlocking the Meaning of Your Dreams. Can you share a story with us that someone has used Dreamwise and the work that you are doing and has really had an impact in their lives?
Well, I think that people, throughout history have experienced incredible transformations as a result of their dreams. I can tell you that the work that we do with dreams has been tremendously meaningful to people. There is one woman whose dream, there is a dream that appears in the book, and we did work with her dream on our podcast, and then she kindly gave us permission for it to be in the book as well. And this was a dream that was very opaque to her. She really didn't know what it meant. But when she heard us talk about it on the podcast, it unlocked all kinds of realizations for her that had to do with a terrible trauma that she had suffered. And I feel like I don't want to say more about that because I want to honor her privacy. But the dream really helped her come to terms with something very painful in the past. It pointed out a new attitude that she could use to access greater depth and wholeness, and it really resulted in significant healing.
If I can jump in, one of the most difficult things about interpreting one's own dream is to be able to see it objectively. The dream is almost always telling the dreamer something that they don't already know. And so consequently, it's like looking at a basket of words and trying to figure out the thing that's missing that you've never heard of before. So Dreamwise offers a very systematic way of moving through each of the keys to ask yourself questions that might not occur to you, and consequently lead you to the piece of information that hadn't occurred to you naturally. And that kind of objectivity is, in fact, the key to a successful dream analysis. And relative to the value of it, I'll just add there's a number of really wonderful, famous examples. The person who created the periodic table of elements, Dmitri Mendeleev, he had been trying to organize the elements based on their properties, and he was looking for a pattern. He fell asleep at his desk and dreamt of the elements arranging themselves in a particular table. He woke, wrote it down, and that became the pattern for the periodic table. Albert Einstein had a dream that he was speeding down a mountainside at the speed of light, and he observed how the stars changed in their appearance as he was moving. And that actually led him to his groundbreaking theory of relativity. Mary Shelley, who wrote Frankenstein, had a nightmare, and she dreamt of a young scientist kneeling behind a monstrous figure that he had created. And that led her to writing that book. Paul McCartney, he dreamt the melody to the famous song Yesterday, woke up, was fully formed in his mind, went to the piano and played it. He was shocked. He was actually worried that maybe he'd stolen it unconsciously from someone else, but he hadn't. The guy that invented the sewing machine, Elias Howe, he had a dream that he was surrounded by warriors holding spears with holes near their tips. And when he awoke, he realized that placing a hole near the tip of the needle rather than at the end would allow it to loop through the thread more effectively, and that enabled him to create the first mechanized sewing machine. So there are wonderful examples of people taking their dreams seriously, and by pondering them, there is access to insight, feelings, and very practical problem solving. Dreamwise helps people extract as much as is possible from the wisdom of the dream maker, which is the deep center of their personality that they don't generally have easy access to.
Thank you. What are some of the benefits of sustained dream work in our path to self-awareness?
I can speak from experience with my own clients in my own life, and an experience that I had many, many years ago where I read a little bit of Jung, and I read his two phrases. One was he referred to the inner companion, and the other was the treasure hard to attain. And I was probably in my 20s, maybe my early 30s, and it was like, oh, I want that. I want the treasure. Where is it? I was fairly literal still at that point. And I definitely want an inner companion. And I don't know that I would literalize it so much as that there's a separate personality, although Jung felt that he had a separate personality. But there is a sense of being deeper and wider and more solidly based in one's own life when there is a connection with one's own depths that working with dreams can help us achieve. And that's why Jungian training prioritizes learning about dreams and their interpretation. That's why we decipher or discuss and explore a dream every week on the podcast. That's why we've created Dream School. It's why we've written the book Dreamwise. It will make you bigger, deeper, richer, less anxious, and knowing that there is more of you than you can ever experience in your conscious life alone.
And if I could add to that, what I would say is that when you write down your dreams regularly and you work with them, it will be as if you were having a sustained conversation with that inner companion that Deb was just speaking about. You'll notice that certain themes crop up repeatedly in your dreams, but you'll notice that they shift and change. So you might see yourself be very afraid of something for a while, and you have a kind of, perennially every month or so, you have another dream of a zombie, let's say. But over time, those images change, and the zombie becomes less frightening. Maybe the zombie becomes your friend. So you can actually track your inner psychological development through dream work. And this requires getting into the practice, the discipline of writing your dreams down and working on them. And we help you to do all of those things in the book.
So, Lisa, if we have very strong emotions in our dreams, what does that mean? Is that something to really pay attention to?
Yeah, I think that the dream maker uses emotion almost like a kind of psychological highlighter. It's like it really wants you to pay attention. If you have a strong dream that's very beautiful and very positive, it really supports you. It can change your whole mood for that day or maybe even that week. But if you have a very frightening dream, it is like the dream maker is really trying to get your attention. That's essentially what nightmares are. It's like the psyche has turned up the volume so that you can't just ignore it. It might be saying something, there's something here that you need to pay attention to.
Really calls out to us telling, hey, these are little markers in our road that we need to really pay attention to.
Yes.
Yeah. Dreams are really, in many, many ways, images of affect. And affect is what really makes us human. We're pretty much, a lot of the time, we're very conscious, rational, active, focused, etc. And a dream will wake us up with a strong feeling, even a mild feeling of, oh my gosh, that was, that, I didn't like that. Or that was so sad. Or, oh, it was so poignant to see what happened to that little animal that I dreamt of. So dreams are calling us to go a little deeper and take a look at the image and what is the feeling. And we have a whole chapter on feeling in dreams in the book. It's really a critical component of dreams.
One of the things we also recognize in just modern culture is that any number of feelings have become disallowed. And that can be dependent upon the family you were raised in, the religion, the part of the world. So, for instance, you might be raised in a home where no one is allowed to be angry, or at least allowed to display anything about that. And yet, as we grow and mature, that category of feeling has a legitimacy to it. So it's not uncommon for people to have dreams and they'll meet a rather angry, aggressive figure. And as the figure is standing in front of them, maybe not even saying anything, suddenly the person, which we call the dream ego, starts feeling really angry and aggressive and might even jump on the other character and they start this big wrestling fighting match. So sometimes the images in the dream discharge the secret feelings that have been disallowed into the conscious personality, and then in the safety of the dream environment, we can find ourselves angry in a way that we hadn't known we were before. We can find ourselves grieving over something that we were determined not to feel bad about. And we can find ourselves suddenly deeply curious about something that we couldn't have imagined allowing ourselves to be curious about in the waking life.
So, to dovetail with that, how do we know if we're correctly interpreting our dreams?
Well, I think that you can tell sometimes, and I would especially encourage listeners to pay attention to your body when you're working with dreams, because if you suddenly have a realization that creates a kind of subtle shift in your body, sometimes we think of it like a click or an aha, or you just kind of feel something slide into place. That's a real signal that you've hit upon an important insight. But luckily, dreams will help you. If you do work on a dream and you come up with a given interpretation, you may find that the next night you have another dream that kind of reinforces it. It's like the dream maker is saying, yes, you got it. But it's happened to me that I've done work on a dream and I think I've understood it. And the next night I get a dream with just even stronger imagery that's even more upsetting. And it's like the dream maker saying, you did not get the message. Go back to the drawing board. So, and that's kind of what we mean by this sustained conversation. It's like you can, your dreams start to speak directly to you. And it's like they just open up when they know that you're listening.
So, do our dream, if we have a disturbing dream or a very intense dream, does that tend to go away when we kind of get to some type of resolution?
Absolutely. That really does happen. That a lot of times, particularly with a recurring nightmare, and people have these pretty regularly, and I have had them, that if we can go in a kind of meditative state, which Jung called active imagination, replay the dream in our imagination, and then right there at the point where you would normally run away, to turn and ask the character, "What are you here to teach me?" And almost always, the whole attitude of the monster or the intruder changes, and they'll often say something like, "Well, I'm so glad you finally asked me that." And then either an experience or literal information can be exchanged. If we take that in, the unconscious has solved the problem. The thing that's chasing us in our dreams is the thing that we don't want to know, but the wisest part of us has discovered we have to know it, that it's essential information.
I like that. I think that that's so empowering. How often do we turn around and face the monster, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, and so when we confront our fears or inner conflicts, that's what happens. They end up becoming an ally in some way.
They often do. They often
Yeah.
do. Most of the
Yeah.
time, what frightens us in a dream is not something that's actually dangerous. It's an image of something that we have disallowed or that we thought we couldn't or shouldn't be. But if we can get past that ego attitude, like Joseph was saying, it can become a rich source. It can become an ally.
That's particularly true with what we call shadow dreams, that often the behaviors that we find intolerable in other people are traits that we actually possess, but often because of the values that we absorbed as kids, again, we find them unacceptable. We'll see them out in the environment. Oh, that person is unfaithful. Oh, that person is so horribly dishonest. And when these characters show up in dreams, and if we can interact with them in the right way, we can find that, oh, that's right, sometimes I'm dishonest. And if we go a little bit deeper through amplification, we find that the archetype of the trickster is often underneath. And the trickster activates often as a resource of last possibility. When being straightforward can't save you, sometimes being tricky will save you. And we often have to be tricky. Hopefully not in a way that puts us too far outside of the culture. But life isn't kind to the naive.
In what ways do our dreams guide us towards like creativity and healing?
Really, everything in Jungian psychology and using dreams as such a rich source of access to ourselves is all about what Jung called individuation, becoming our very best self, fulfilling the potential that we innately have to become whole human beings, not perfect, but whole human beings. And Jung also posited that we have 5 instincts. Some of them are the usual ones like, hunger and a need for activities, sex, etc. But one of those 5 was creativity, which tells you what a huge place it really has in the psyche to go forward in our lives and to live fully with a sense of possibility and freedom, not necessarily artistic creativity. And so dreams are there to point out to us, what are you afraid of? Or where is your own, some dishonest part of yourself? Well, where is this anxiety coming from? And if we can take it into consciousness and understand the dream, we have just integrated a little bit of shadow. It's just been operating down there underneath the surface. It's not as if we ignore it, it'll go away. It takes energy from our conscious lived daily life. So working with dreams helps us individuate, become whole, and become free. and present in our lives so that we can look ahead into where we're going, where our life spirit is, rather than kind of dragging a heavy sack of stones behind us that are all the rules and regs and shadow material we never looked at.
It also begs an interesting question from a Jungian standpoint. What is healing? And that's a very complicated and fascinating question to throw on the table. Relative to dream work, the most common form of healing that we find is a correction of attitude. So we have a lot of emotions, and emotions are like weather, and they change and they should change, and we want them to be very colorful. We should have all the weather patterns that are possible, and we should allow ourselves to have the full range of feelings and all of the intensities or subtleties. But underneath the surface, let's say there's a storm above the ocean. When we drop down further and further and further at the bottom of the ocean, there are tectonic plates. And these plates are the core attitudes with which we navigate life. They're very difficult to uncover. They're very difficult to change on a conscious level. And often, when the core attitude is no longer serving us, there is a bit of an earthquake, a kind of tectonic shift in the psyche. And the old attitude passes away, and a new attitude begins to rise. And the dreams will reflect that process. If we're paying attention, we can facilitate accepting the new thing and letting go of the old. And this is most relevant in what we colloquially call the midlife crisis. I've been a certain person until I was 40 or 50 years old, and all of a sudden, the stuff I used to enjoy is meaningless to me, or I can't tolerate this career one more time. And we begin to feel this strong dissatisfaction for the way things were. But really, what's happening is that the part of the psyche that was guiding us is changing, and the new attitude is coming forward. Being stuck in the wrong attitude makes us unwell. It puts us at variance with a deeper part of ourselves. That something that's trying to change can be fought, and the fighting is the thing that creates the symptoms. And that was Freud's observation way, way at the beginning of talk therapy, that people were coming to him with what he called hysterical symptoms, which is basically they were under so much stress that it began to interfere with their neurological functioning. An arm wouldn't work right. They couldn't see correctly out of one of their eyes. They had terrible GI problems. And what he noticed is when the hidden information had become known in a conscious way, it released this enormous amount of tension. And then both the personality and in those circumstances, those damaging tensions in the body would release, and somebody then could accept something that they did not know before. And this process of discovering and integrating, which the alchemists called salve et coagula, dissolve and then come back into a whole piece, dissolve and come back into a whole piece, is greatly facilitated by dream work. It makes it more elegant, more likely to be successful, often less painful.
That's fascinating. Thank you for sharing that. Lisa, what would you like readers and our listeners to take away from DreamWise?
Well, as we've said earlier here today, it is really difficult to work on your own dreams. I mean, I've been keeping a dream journal for 25 years, more, I think. And I've been I've always tried to work on my own dreams. It's really hard. It's hard to hold that symbolic perspective. It's hard to get outside my own conscious attitude to try to see my backside, as it were. It's how do you see behind you? And that's kind of what a dream does. Is it sort of says, here's the thing you can't see. So it's very helpful to work with a therapist who is knowledgeable in dream interpretation, or to be part of a dream group. Those things can be really helpful. But if you don't have access to those, if you don't have the money or the time or even the inclination to do those things, DreamWise really gives you the tools to work on your own dreams. It helps you do that very difficult thing of getting away from your conscious attitude to be able to see this alternative perspective that is being offered by the dream maker. And we think we've done it in a way that is both compelling, that is easily actionable. So the keys make it very easy to apply these insights to your dreams, and also that it's fun and inspiring. So we really hope that we've gifted people with the tools to unearth this incredible wisdom that's inside each and every one of us, and that we've made it practical and fun.
Well, Lisa, Deborah, and Joseph, thank you all for taking the time to be on the show with us here today.
Thank you for having us.
Well, thank you all. It's been such an honor to spend this time with you and to talk about your new book, DreamWise, Unlocking the Meaning of Your Dreams. Well, we're at the end of our time today. I'd like to thank everyone for tuning in. You've been listening to Moments with Mary Ann, where we make every moment count.
In a single moment, your life can change. Moments with Mary Ann is a transformative hour that covers an endless array of topics with the best of the best. Her guests are leaders in their fields, ranging from inspirational authors, top industry leaders, and business and spiritual entrepreneurs. Each guest is gifted and a true visionary, a recognized leader in her own work, and while teaching others to develop, refocus, and grow, Mary Ann will bring the best guest and sometimes a special surprise. Don't miss this. You never know just which moment will change your life forever. Make sure to tune in and visit momentswithmaryann.com for more information.